Maya Johnson stared at the divorce papers in her trembling hands, the weight of them heavy against her fingers. The golden band on her left hand caught the light from the chandelier above, mocking her with its empty promises. 1 year of marriage to billionaire tech mogul Elijah Warner. 1 year of pretending, of sleeping in separate bedrooms, of attending events side by side with practiced smiles that never reached their eyes. 1 year of a contract that had made her wealthy beyond her dreams but had slowly killed something inside her. "You can't be serious," she whispered, looking up at the man who had been her husband in name only for the past 12 months. The man whose company she had saved by agreeing to this arrangement. The man she had foolishly fallen in love with despite their agreement to keep things strictly business. Elijah stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. Manhattan sprawled out below him like his personal kingdom. At 35, he commanded respect in every room he entered. His dark skin gleamed in the fading sunlight, his custom suit molding perfectly to his broad shoulders. He didn't turn to face her. "The contract is ending in 2 weeks, Maya. I thought you'd be prepared for this." His voice was steady, emotionless. The same voice he used in board meetings when making decisions that would affect thousands of lives. Maya felt her heart cracking further, the pain nearly physical. "I know when our contract ends," she said, fighting to keep her voice from breaking. "But I didn't expect you to have the papers drawn up a full 2 weeks early. Eager to be rid of me?" That made him turn, his dark eyes finally meeting hers. For a moment, something flashed across his face, something that looked almost like pain, before his expression hardened again. "This was always the plan, Maya. 1 year. You get $5 million in shares in Warner Tech. I get to save my company's public image and secure the Chin deal. We both knew this day was coming." Maya stood up, the papers falling from her hands to scatter across the pristine marble floor of his home office. Their home, or at least the place she had lived for the past year, trying desperately not to feel like an imposter. "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten our arrangement," she said, surprising herself with how calm she sounded when inside she was screaming. "I'll sign the papers. I'll play my part until the last day. I'll even attend your company gala next week and smile for the cameras one last time." She took a deep breath. "But after that, you'll never have to see me again." Something shifted in Elijah's eyes then, a momentary crack in his perfect facade. His jaw tightened, and he took a step toward her before stopping himself. "Maya. Don't," she cut him off, raising a hand. "Don't pretend you care now. It's been a year, Elijah. A year of living with a stranger who can barely stand to be in the same room as me." That wasn't entirely true. There had been moments, brief, precious moments, when she thought she'd glimpsed the real man behind the billionaire mask. Late-night conversations over wine when he'd told her about growing up poor, about watching his mother work 3 jobs, about building his company from nothing. The time she'd found him asleep on the couch with his glasses still on, vulnerable in a way he never allowed himself to be when awake. The way he'd held her hand at his mother's birthday party, his thumb absently stroking her skin as he laughed with his family. Moments that had made her fall for him, despite all her promises to herself that this was just business. "That's not fair," he said quietly, his deep voice rumbling in the silent room. Maya laughed, the sound brittle. "No? Then tell me, Elijah. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you came home before midnight? When was the last time you looked at me and actually saw me, not just the convenient solution to your PR problem?" He didn't answer, his expression unreadable. "That's what I thought," she whispered, the fight suddenly draining from her. She bent down to gather the scattered divorce papers, stacking them neatly on his desk. "I'll have these signed by tomorrow." She turned to leave, her designer heels clicking against the floor, shoes he had bought her like everything else she now owned. At the door, she paused, unable to stop herself from looking back one last time. Elijah stood exactly where she'd left him, but his perfect posture had faltered. His shoulders were slumped, his hand pressed against the window as he stared out at the city below. For a moment he looked lost, a man carrying burdens too heavy for any one person. Maya wanted to go to him, to press her hand against his back and tell him she understood. That she knew he'd made the practical choice when his company was on the verge of collapse after those false accusations. That she didn't blame him for choosing a business arrangement over real love. But she had her pride. And her heart couldn't take any more damage. "Goodbye, Elijah," she said softly before walking through the door and closing it gently behind her. In the hallway she leaned against the wall, eyes closed, fighting back tears. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not where he might see or hear. Inside the office, unknown to Maya, Elijah Warner stared at the closed door, his hand clenched into a fist at his side. On his desk, his phone buzzed with an incoming call from his assistant. The screen displayed a calendar notification: Chin deal final signing, 2 weeks. The deal that had required a stable, married CEO at the helm of Warner Tech. The deal that would save the jobs of 5,000 employees. The deal that had made him propose a contract marriage to Maya Johnson, the brilliant finance expert who had first alerted him to the company's vulnerable position. The deal that was almost complete. As was his marriage. Elijah ignored the buzzing phone, his eyes still fixed on the door where Maya had disappeared. For the first time in his life, the business titan wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life, not in marrying Maya Johnson but in preparing to let her go. 1 year earlier, Maya had stood in this same office, staring at Elijah Warner with disbelief written across her face. "You want me to what?" she had asked, certain she had misheard him. "Marry me," Elijah had repeated, his tone matter-of-fact as he paced before the same windows where he now stood daily. A business arrangement, of course. For 1 year. Maya, then just a financial consultant brought in to help Warner Tech through a rough patch, had laughed nervously. "Mr. Warner, if this is a joke." "I never joke about business, Ms. Johnson." His dark eyes had been serious, calculating. "And this is business. The Chin Group will not sign with a company they believe to be unstable. The rumors about my personal life are affecting Warner Tech's reputation." The rumors? The false accusations from his ex-girlfriend, claiming he had stolen her software ideas. The tabloid stories painting him as cold, untrustworthy, a man who used people and discarded them. "So you want to marry me to, what? Improve your image?" Maya had asked, incredulous. "To save my company," he had corrected. "The Chin deal is worth billions and will secure jobs for thousands of my employees. James Chin is old-fashioned. He believes in family values. He wants to see me settled. But why me? There must be 100 women who would jump at the chance to marry you, even temporarily." Elijah had stopped pacing then, fixing her with that penetrating gaze that made her feel exposed. "Because you understand business. Because you're smart and capable and not easily impressed by wealth. Because you discovered the financial leak that was bleeding my company dry when my entire team of experts missed it." He had paused. "And because I trust you not to sell this story to the tabloids." Maya had needed the money. Her mother's medical bills were piling up, and her student loans from her MBA were crushing her. $5 million would change everything. 1 year, she had agreed finally. No physical relationship required. Separate bedrooms. "And when it's over, we part ways amicably." "Precisely," Elijah had nodded, seemingly relieved. "A business arrangement beneficial to us both." Now, standing in her massive walk-in closet filled with designer clothes she had never dreamed of owning, Maya wondered how she could have been so naive. How she could have thought her heart would remain uninvolved when living with Elijah day after day, seeing the man behind the headlines. The man who worked tirelessly, who called his mother every Sunday, who secretly funded scholarships for underprivileged kids. The man who had never once looked at her as anything more than a business partner. Her phone buzzed with a text from Carmen, Elijah's sister and the only person who knew the truth about their arrangement. "You okay?" Elijah just called. Sounded weird. Maya sighed, typing back, "He gave me divorce papers today. 2 weeks early." 3 dots appeared immediately then. "What?" "I'm coming over." Maya started to type "don't," then deleted it. She could use a friend right now. Someone who understood the complicated mess her life had become. She changed out of her business attire into comfortable leggings and an oversized sweater, trying not to think about the fact that in 2 weeks, this penthouse, these clothes, this life would no longer be hers. She would go back to her old apartment, which she had kept as part of their arrangement. Back to normal life. The elevator dinged, announcing Carmen's arrival. Unlike her reserved brother, Carmen Warner was a whirlwind of energy and emotion. She burst into the living room, her braids swinging, eyes blazing. "Where is he? I'm going to kill him." Despite everything, Maya smiled weakly. "At the office, I think." Carmen flopped onto the couch beside her. "What happened?" Maya explained about the divorce papers, about the contract ending, about the final company gala next week. "And you're just going to sign them?" Carmen demanded, incredulous. "After everything?" "What everything, Carmen? It was a business deal. It's ending. That's all." Carmen shook her head fiercely. "Don't give me that. I've seen how you look at him. And more importantly, I've seen how he looks at you when you're not watching." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "Don't. Please don't give me false hope." "It's not false," Carmen insisted. "My brother is the smartest idiot I know. He's convinced himself this is just business because that's safer than admitting he has actual human feelings. She took Maya's hands. He's been different since you came into his life. Happier. More human. If he cared, Maya said softly, he wouldn't be so eager to end things. Carmen looked like she wanted to say more, but instead just squeezed Maya's hands. The gala is next week? The big one for the Chin deal closing. Maya nodded. A slow, mischievous smile spread across Carmen's face. Then we have 1 week to make my dense brother realize what he's about to lose. Carmen, no. Carmen, yes, the other woman countered. Trust me. By the night of that gala, Elijah Warner will be begging you to tear up those divorce papers. Maya shook her head, but couldn't quite suppress the tiny flicker of hope in her chest. It's not that simple. Love never is, Carmen said with a shrug. But that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for. Later that night, after Carmen had left with promises to put her plan into action, Maya stood on the penthouse balcony, looking out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. The cool night air brushed against her skin, and she wrapped her arms around herself. The door behind her slid open and she stiffened, recognizing Elijah's footsteps without having to turn around. You're home early, she said, her voice carefully neutral. I had some thinking to do, he replied, coming to stand beside her at the railing, careful to maintain space between them. For a long moment, they stood in silence, side by side but separated by more than just physical distance. My sister called me, he finally said. She had some choice words for me. Despite herself, Maya smiled slightly. I can imagine. She thinks I'm making a mistake. His voice was quiet, almost contemplative. Maya's heart raced, but she kept her gaze fixed on the city lights. And what do you think? The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. When she finally risked a glance at him, Elijah was watching her, his expression troubled. I think, he said slowly, that I need to stay focused on the Chin deal. It closes in 2 weeks. After that. He trailed off. After that our contract ends, Maya finished for him. And we both move on with our lives. Elijah's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes. Maya turned away, blinking rapidly to dispel the threat of tears. Then I guess we have nothing more to discuss. She walked past him, back toward the sliding door, but his voice stopped her. Maya. She paused but didn't turn. The gala next week. Will you still attend? With me. One last public appearance. One last pretense for the cameras and the Chin family. One last night of pretending to be Elijah Warner's beloved wife. Of course, she said quietly. I'll keep my end of our bargain. As she walked away, she missed the way Elijah's hand reached toward her, then fell back to his side. She missed the conflict that darkened his eyes as he watched her go. And she missed the moment when he took the wedding band from his finger and stared at it for a long, silent moment before slipping it back on with a determined set to his jaw. The first time Maya met Elijah Warner, she had spilled coffee on his custom-made Italian shoes. She had been rushing to her interview at Warner Tech, already 10 minutes late because her car wouldn't start and the subway had been delayed. The coffee shop in the lobby of the gleaming skyscraper had been her last desperate attempt to appear professional. Nothing said, hire me, like showing up with caffeine already in hand. What she hadn't counted on was colliding with the most intimidating man she'd ever seen as she hurried toward the elevators. I'm so sorry, she had gasped, watching in horror as her extra-large latte splashed across polished leather shoes that probably cost more than her rent. The man had looked down at his ruined footwear, then up at her, his expression impossible to read. He was gorgeous in a stern, unapproachable way, tall and broad-shouldered, with close-cropped hair and dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through her. Are you always this clumsy or am I special? He had asked, his deep voice sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. Maya had straightened her shoulders, refusing to be intimidated despite her mortification. Only on days when I'm late for job interviews that could change my life. Something that might have been amusement had flickered across his face. What position are you interviewing for? Financial consultant. I'm meeting with the department head at 9. She had checked her watch and winced. Or 9:15 at this rate. The man had studied her for a long moment, then pulled out a business card and handed it to her. Take this. Tell reception to call this number. They'll reschedule you for tomorrow morning. She had looked down at the card, her eyes widening when she saw the name embossed in simple, elegant lettering. Elijah Warner, CO. She had stammered. The man whose shoes you just ruined, he had finished for her, but there had been a hint of a smile playing around his mouth. Tomorrow 9 a.m. Try to leave the coffee at home. With that, he had walked away, leaving Maya staring after him, the expensive business card clutched in her suddenly trembling fingers. The next day she had arrived 30 minutes early, stone-cold sober, and with her presentation polished to perfection. When she had been ushered not into a conference room but directly to the CEO's office on the top floor, she had been shocked. Even more shocking was when Elijah Warner himself had greeted her, gesturing for her to sit across from him at his massive desk. "Mr. Warner," she had said cautiously, "I was expecting to meet with your financial team. They'll join us shortly." He had fixed her with that penetrating gaze. "But first I want to hear directly from you why I should hire the woman who ruined my favorite shoes." Rising to the challenge, Maya had launched into her analysis of Warner Tech's financial situation, pointing out vulnerabilities she had identified just from publicly available information. When she had mentioned the pattern she'd noticed in their quarterly reports, a pattern that suggested someone inside the company might be embezzling funds, Elijah had gone very still. By the time the financial team arrived, Elijah Warner had offered her triple the salary she had been expecting with one condition: she would report directly to him, bypassing the chain of command. 3 months later she had uncovered the embezzlement scheme that had been slowly bleeding the company dry, orchestrated by none other than the CFO himself, a man who had been Elijah's mentor and friend for over a decade. The night after the CFO's arrest, Elijah had found Maya working late in her office. Without a word, he had placed a glass of whiskey on her desk, then raised his own in a silent toast. "You saved my company," he had said simply. Maya had shaken her head. "You would have figured it out eventually." "No," he had admitted after a long pause. "I trusted him completely. I was blind." He had looked at her, then really looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't." That moment, that single genuine moment of vulnerability from a man who otherwise seemed carved from stone, had been the beginning of Maya's downfall. The first crack in her professional detachment. The first hint that Elijah Warner might be more than just the cold, calculating businessman portrayed in the media. 2 weeks later, when the tabloids had erupted with accusations from his ex-girlfriend and Warner Tech stock had plummeted, he had called Maya into his office and proposed their arrangement. Now, sitting at her vanity in the penthouse that had been her home for the past year, Maya touched up her lipstick and tried to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. Tonight was the Warner Tech quarterly dinner, a smaller event than next week's gala, but still important for maintaining appearances before the Chin deal closed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. "Operation Make My Brother Realize He's an Idiot begins tonight. Wear the red dress. The one that made him walk into a door last month." Despite her melancholy, Maya smiled. Carmen was nothing if not determined. But Maya had her doubts. If Elijah had feelings for her beyond their business arrangement, wouldn't he have shown some sign during their year together? Still, she found herself reaching for the red dress hanging in her closet. The silk creation clung to her curves before falling in a waterfall of fabric that moved like liquid with every step. The first time she had worn it to a charity event, she had emerged from her bedroom to find Elijah staring at her with an intensity that had made her breath catch, right before he had abruptly turned and collided with the doorframe. He had blamed it on a text message distracting him. Maya hadn't been convinced. The dress hugged her body perfectly as she slipped it on, the deep crimson a stunning contrast against her dark skin. She kept her jewelry minimal, just the diamond earrings Elijah had given her for her birthday, claiming they were part of maintaining appearances, even though no cameras had been present when he had handed her the robin's egg blue box over breakfast. When she stepped into the living room, Elijah was already waiting, his back to her as he looked out over the city. The setting sun bathed him in golden light, highlighting the powerful line of his shoulders beneath his perfectly tailored tuxedo. "I'm ready," she said softly. He turned, and for a breathless moment, something raw and unguarded flashed across his face as his eyes traveled slowly down her body and back up again. Then, like a shutter closing, his expression returned to its usual polite mask. "You look lovely," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "The car is waiting." In the elevator down to the lobby, they stood side by side in silence. Maya stole a glance at his reflection in the polished doors. His jaw was tight, a muscle working in his cheek as if he was clenching his teeth. "Elijah," she began, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. "Not now, Maya," he cut her off, his voice strained. "Just, not now." The elevator doors opened, and he placed his hand at the small of her back as they walked through the lobby, a gesture that had become automatic over the past year, a perfect imitation of an attentive husband. But tonight, his touch seemed to burn through the silk of her dress, and Maya had to fight not to lean into it, not to turn and press herself against him, not to beg him to tell her that this past year had meant something to him too. As they slid into the back of the waiting town car, Maya caught sight of a familiar figure across the street. A paparazzo who had been following them for months, convinced there was a story to uncover about the reclusive billionaire and his mysterious wife. If only he knew how right he was. And how wrong. Same photographer, she murmured as the car pulled away from the curb. Elijah glanced back, his expression hardening. They'll lose interest after the divorce is announced. The word hung between them, heavy and final. I suppose they will, Maya agreed quietly, turning to look out the window as the city lights blurred past, matching the tears she refused to let fall. The quarterly dinner was held at the Pierre, in a private dining room overlooking Central Park. As Maya and Elijah entered, heads turned. They made a striking couple, her in flowing red silk, him commanding in his black tuxedo, his hand at the small of her back guiding her through the crowd of executives and investors. The practiced smile Maya had perfected over the past year slid onto her face automatically as they moved from group to group, exchanging pleasantries. To anyone watching, they appeared to be the perfect power couple, the brilliant, charismatic CEO and his elegant, accomplished wife. No one would guess that in 2 weeks, it would all be over. There's James Chin, Elijah murmured close to her ear, his breath warm against her skin. His final approval on the contracts is all we need to close the deal. Maya followed his gaze to an elderly Asian man in an impeccable suit, watching them with shrewd eyes from across the room. Shall we? She asked, shifting seamlessly into her role as the supportive wife. As they approached, James Chin smiled warmly, reaching out to take Maya's hand in both of his. Mrs. Warner, he said, his accent soft but distinct. You look radiant tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chin, Maya replied with genuine warmth. She had come to like the old businessman over the past few months of negotiations. There was a kindness in his eyes that belied his reputation as a ruthless deal-maker. Please, James, he corrected her. I think we know each other well enough by now. James, she agreed with a smile. How is your wife? Has she recovered from her fall? The elderly man's face softened. Much better, thank you for asking. The flowers you sent brightened her spirits considerably. Beside her, Elijah raised an eyebrow slightly. He hadn't known about the flowers. Maya had sent them independently after hearing about Mrs. Chen's accident during one of the negotiation dinners. Elijah, Chen turned to her husband, extending his hand. Your quarterly reports exceeded expectations. Most impressive. Thank you, James, Elijah replied, shaking the offered hand. The new software division is performing beyond our projections. As the men fell into business discussion, Maya felt a tap on her shoulder and turned to find Carmen grinning at her. That dress is doing exactly what it's supposed to, Carmen whispered, linking her arm through Maya's and leading her slightly away from the men. He hasn't taken his eyes off you all night. He's just playing his part, Maya murmured, though her heart beat faster at Carmen's words. Aha, Carmen said skeptically. That's why he nearly spilled his drink when you bent over to fix your shoe earlier. She squeezed Maya's arm. Trust me, my brother is fighting a losing battle with himself. Before Maya could respond, she felt that familiar presence behind her. Elijah, his hand coming to rest lightly at her waist. Sorry to interrupt, he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. Maya, James was asking about that charity you support, the one for girls in STEM. Girls Rising, Maya supplied, allowing him to guide her back to where James Chin waited, his eyes twinkling with something that looked suspiciously like amusement as he watched them approach. Yes, Mrs. Warner was telling me about it last month, Chin said. My granddaughter is interested in computer science. I thought she might benefit from their mentorship program. For the next 20 minutes, Maya found herself deep in conversation with Chin about educational opportunities for young women, while Elijah stood beside her, his hand never leaving her waist. Occasionally he would add a comment, demonstrating how closely he had been listening each time she had talked about her passion project over the past year. It was moments like these that confused Maya the most, when Elijah seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, her passions, her ideas. When he remembered tiny details she had mentioned months ago. When he looked at her with what appeared to be genuine admiration. If this was all just an act, he deserved an Oscar. As the evening progressed, they circulated through the room, the perfect team. Maya charmed investors while Elijah discussed strategy. They finished each other's sentences, anticipated each other's needs, moved in perfect synchronicity like partners who had been together for decades, not just a single year. During dinner, seated at the head table with the company's most important investors and board members, Maya felt Elijah's knee press against hers beneath the tablecloth. When she glanced at him questioningly, he was engaged in conversation with the board chairman, seemingly unaware of the contact. Yet his knee remained warm and solid against hers. And when she shifted slightly away, giving him space, he shifted too, maintaining the connection. These small moments of physical contact had been rare during their marriage. A hand at her back, a brush of fingers when passing a document, standing close together for photographs. Always explainable as necessary for their public image. Always proper. Always controlled. But tonight felt different. Tonight, Elijah seemed unable to stop touching her, small, almost unconscious points of contact that might have been meaningless if not for the tension Maya could feel radiating from him each time. After dinner, as the string quartet began to play and couples moved to the dance floor, Elijah turned to her, extending his hand. "Dance with me?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. Maya placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her to the center of the floor. His arm slid around her waist, drawing her closer than was strictly necessary. Her breath caught as his cheek brushed against her temple. "You've been watching me all night," she whispered, unable to stop herself. "Why?" His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Have I?" "You know you have." For a long moment he was silent, guiding her smoothly through the steps of the waltz. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet she had to strain to hear him. "Perhaps I'm trying to memorize you." The words sent a shiver through her. "Why would you need to do that?" Again that pause, heavy with unspoken things. 2 weeks, Maya. 2 weeks until their contract ended. 2 weeks until she walked out of his life forever. "Your choice, not mine," she reminded him, her voice catching despite her best efforts. His arm tightened around her, imperceptibly drawing her closer. "Is it?" Before she could respond, the music changed and James Chin appeared at their side, requesting a dance with Maya. Elijah released her with visible reluctance, his fingers trailing along her arm as she stepped away. As Chin led her in a gentler, slower dance appropriate to his age, his shrewd eyes studied her face. "Forgive an old man's curiosity," he said after a moment, "but how did you and Elijah meet?" "He's never told me the story." Maya smiled, recounting the coffee incident that had led to their first meeting. Chin laughed appreciatively at the image of the intimidating Elijah Warner with ruined shoes. "And when did you know he was the one?" Chin asked, his eyes twinkling. The question caught Maya off guard. For a year, she had been spinning half-truths about their relationship, creating a love story that didn't exist. But tonight, with the end so near, she found herself answering honestly. "There was a moment," she said softly, "about 3 months after we started working together. A project had gone wrong and the team was panicking. Everyone was pointing fingers, afraid to take responsibility. But Elijah stood up in front of the board and took the blame himself, even though it wasn't his fault." She smiled at the memory. "He protected his people. That's when I knew who he really was beneath all the power and money." It was true. That had been the moment she had begun to see beyond the billionaire facade to the man beneath, the man she had eventually fallen in love with, despite all her best intentions. Chin studied her face, something knowing in his expression. "And does he know that's when you fell in love with him?" Maya's steps faltered slightly. "Forgive me," Chin said quickly. "I am too direct sometimes. My wife says it's my worst quality." He smiled kindly. "But the best partnerships, Mrs. Warner, are built on honesty. Remember that." As the dance ended, Chin bowed slightly and returned her to where Elijah stood watching them, his expression unreadable. "Your wife is as intelligent as she is beautiful," Chin told Elijah. "You are a fortunate man." "I know," Elijah replied, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. Chin nodded, satisfied, then excused himself to speak with other guests. In the momentary privacy, Elijah took Maya's hand, his thumb stroking lightly over her knuckles. "What were you and Chin discussing?" he asked. "You looked serious." Maya hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. "He asked how we met. And when I knew." "When you knew what?" Elijah prompted when she trailed off. "When I knew you were the one," she finished, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from her voice. Elijah's expression tightened. "What did you tell him?" "The truth," she said simply. "Or part of it anyway." She pulled her hand from his. "I need some air." Without waiting for his response, she turned and made her way toward the terrace doors, feeling his eyes on her back with every step. Outside, the cool night air was a relief against her flushed skin. She moved to the stone balustrade, looking out over the twinkling lights of Central Park below. A moment later she heard the terrace door open and close, followed by familiar footsteps. Elijah came to stand beside her, close but not touching. "You're upset," he observed quietly. Maya laughed softly, the sound devoid of humor. "Upset? No. Tired maybe. Tired of pretending." "Maya." "Do you know what the worst part is?" she interrupted, turning to face him. "The worst part is that sometimes I forget it's not real. Sometimes, when you look at me a certain way or remember something I mentioned months ago or laugh at one of my terrible jokes, I forget that this is all just a business arrangement to you." She shook her head. "And then I remember and it hurts all over again." Elijah's face was half in shadow, making his expression impossible to read. "You think this has been easy for me? Hasn't it?" she challenged. "The perfect solution to your problem. A wife who asks for nothing, who plays her part flawlessly, who will walk away when the contract ends without causing a scene. Is that what you think?" His voice was strained. "That you mean nothing to me?" Hope flared in Maya's chest, painful in its intensity. "What am I supposed to think, Elijah? You handed me divorce papers 2 weeks early." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "I handed you those papers because—" The terrace door opened again, light spilling out as Carmen poked her head through. "There you are. The board chairman is looking for you both. Something about a toast." Elijah closed his eyes briefly, frustration evident in the set of his jaw. When he opened them again, his mask was back in place. "We'll be right there." Carmen looked between them, clearly sensing the tension, then nodded and retreated. Elijah offered Maya his arm. "Shall we?" Whatever moment had been building between them was gone, shattered by the interruption. Maya placed her hand on his arm, allowing him to lead her back inside, back to their performance. But as they rejoined the party, he leaned down, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered, "This conversation isn't over, Maya." Elijah sat in his office at Warner Tech, staring unseeing at the skyline through his floor-to-ceiling windows. The Chen contracts lay on his desk, awaiting only final signatures at next week's gala to complete the deal that had consumed his life for the past year. The deal that had given him a reason to propose to Maya. The deal that would no longer be an excuse to keep her in his life. He picked up his phone, staring at the home screen, a photo of him and Maya at his mother's birthday celebration 6 months ago. They were both laughing, his arm around her shoulders, her head tilted toward his. Anyone looking at that photo would see a happily married couple. How many times over the past year had he caught himself forgetting that their marriage wasn't real? How many mornings had he found himself lingering over breakfast, inventing reasons to stay at the table just to hear Maya's thoughts on everything from global economics to her favorite mystery novels? How many nights had he stood outside her bedroom door, his hand raised to knock, only to turn away at the last moment, reminding himself of their agreement? No physical relationship. No emotional entanglement. A business arrangement, nothing more. Yet somewhere along the way Maya Johnson had become essential to him. Not just as his contract wife, but as the first person he wanted to share news with, the only person who could make him laugh on his worst days, the woman who haunted his dreams. His office door opened without a knock. Only his sister would dare such a breach of protocol, and Carmen marched in, her expression thunderous. "You're an idiot," she announced, dropping into the chair across from his desk. Elijah sighed, setting down his phone. "I assume Maya told you about the divorce papers." "Of course she did." "She was devastated, Eli." Carmen leaned forward, her eyes flashing. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking that our contract is ending in 2 weeks," he said flatly. "I was thinking that we had an agreement." "An agreement," Carmen repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. "Is that what you call it when you fall in love with someone but are too stubborn to admit it?" Elijah stiffened. "It's not like that." "No? Then why are you sitting here looking like someone died? Why haven't you been sleeping? Why did you spend all of last night staring at Maya like she was water and you were dying of thirst?" "You're being dramatic. And you're being a coward," Carmen shot back. "You're afraid." The accusation hit too close to home. Elijah stood abruptly, turning his back on his sister to stare out the window. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Carmen's voice softened. "I know you better than anyone, Eli. I was there when Dad left and Mom had to work 3 jobs. I was there when you swore you'd never depend on anyone because people always leave." Elijah's jaw tightened. "This isn't about that." "Isn't it?" Carmen stood, coming to stand beside him at the window. "Maya is the best thing that's ever happened to you, and you're pushing her away before she can leave you first." When he didn't respond, she placed a hand on his arm. "She loves you, you know." The word sent a jolt through him. "She can't." "But she does," Carmen insisted. Anyone with eyes can see it. The way she looks at you when you're not watching. The way she defends you to anyone who says a word against you. The way she's put her whole life on hold for a year to help you save your company. Elijah turned to face his sister, something painful and hopeful unfurling in his chest. If she felt that way, she would have said something. Carmen threw up her hands in exasperation. Why would she? You've spent a year reminding her that this is just business. You never gave her any reason to think you wanted more. Had he? Elijah searched his memory, thinking of all the times he had maintained his distance. All the times he had retreated behind his professional facade when Maya got too close. All the times he had wanted to reach for her but stopped himself, bound by the terms of their agreement. Terms he had established. Boundaries he had insisted upon. The gala is next week, Carmen said, interrupting his thoughts. Your last public appearance together before the contract ends. I know, Elijah replied quietly. So what are you going to do about it? Carmen challenged. Sign those divorce papers and spend the rest of your life regretting it? Or tell her how you really feel? The question hung in the air between them. For the first time in his adult life, Elijah Warner didn't have a ready answer, a calculated response, a strategic plan. He only knew that the thought of Maya walking out of his life in 2 weeks was unbearable. On the other side of the city, Maya sat in a small cafe with her best friend, Zoe, who had flown in from Chicago after receiving Maya's tearful phone call the night before. So let me get this straight, Zoe said, stirring her latte. You married a billionaire as a business arrangement. You weren't supposed to fall in love with him. But you did anyway. And now the contract is ending and you're heartbroken. Maya winced. It sounds ridiculous when you put it like that. It sounds like the plot of a romance novel, Zoe corrected, her tone gentler than her words. The question is, does it have a happy ending? Maya stared down at her untouched coffee. No. He's made that very clear. The papers are all drawn up. Have you signed them yet? No. But I will. Zoe reached across the table, covering Maya's hand with her own. Why? Because that was our agreement, Maya said. Because I'm not going to beg a man to love me. Even if you think he might already? Maya's head snapped up. What? Zoe smiled knowingly. Carmen called me. Don't be mad, she added quickly when Maya's eyes narrowed. She's worried about you. And she's convinced her brother is in love with you but too stubborn to admit it. She's wrong, Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. If Elijah felt anything for me beyond our arrangement, he'd have said something by now. Would he? Zoe raised an eyebrow. From what you've told me, the man has built walls around himself thicker than the Great Wall of China. And you agreed to a business arrangement. Maybe he thinks you're just waiting for your payday. Maya hadn't considered that possibility. She thought of Elijah's behavior at the dinner the night before. His constant touches, the way he had watched her all evening, that moment on the terrace when something had seemed to crack in his perfect composure. What are you thinking? Zoe asked, watching her face. I'm thinking that even if you're right, it doesn't matter, Maya sighed. The contract ends in 2 weeks. He's already prepared the papers. What am I supposed to do? Throw myself at him and beg for a real marriage? No, Zoe said decisively. You're supposed to make him come to you. Make him realize exactly what he's about to lose. And how do I do that? A slow smile spread across Zoe's face. First, we need to talk about the gala next week. And the dress you're going to wear. The week passed in a blur of tension and avoided conversations. Elijah came home late most nights, citing work demands as the Chen deal approached its conclusion. Maya threw herself into preparations for the gala, working with the event planner to ensure every detail was perfect for what would be her last official appearance as Mrs. Warner. They orbited each other like cautious satellites, maintaining a careful distance, each waiting for the other to make a move, say something, acknowledge the charged atmosphere between them. On the morning of the gala, Maya awoke to find a small blue box outside her bedroom door. Inside was a diamond necklace that took her breath away, delicate yet striking, with a teardrop pendant that would rest just above her cleavage. There was no note, but she knew it was from Elijah. Another prop for their final performance. She left the apartment early, spending the day at a spa with Zoe and Carmen, being pampered and prepared for the evening ahead. When she returned to the penthouse to dress, Elijah was nowhere to be found, already at the venue according to the text message he had sent. As Maya stood before the mirror in her bedroom, her stylist making final adjustments to her hair, she studied her reflection. The dress Zoe and Carmen had helped her select was a deep midnight blue, almost black until she moved and the fabric caught the light. It clung to her body before flaring slightly at her knees, with a slit that reached mid-thigh. The neckline dipped low enough to be daring without crossing into inappropriate, perfectly showcasing the diamond necklace Elijah had given her. Her hair was swept up, revealing the long line of her neck and the delicate diamond drop earrings that matched the necklace. Her makeup was flawless, emphasizing her eyes and her full lips. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman prepared to fight for what she wanted. And what she wanted was Elijah. Zoe squeezed her arm as they stood in the foyer, waiting for the car. Remember the plan. Make him come to me, Maya repeated, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Exactly, Carmen agreed, adjusting the wrap around Maya's shoulders. No chasing, no begging. You're a queen and he needs to work for you. But what if, Maya began. No what ifs, Zoe cut her off firmly. Just trust us. Trust yourself. The car arrived and Maya took a deep breath, stepping into the cool evening air. This was it, her last chance to turn her contract marriage into something real. As the car pulled away from the curb, she touched the diamond at her throat, drawing strength from the knowledge that whatever happened tonight, she would no longer be living a lie. One way or another, everything would change. For better or worse, after tonight, she would know if Elijah Warner truly wanted her to be his wife. The Warner Tech Annual Gala was the social event of the season, bringing together the city's elite, business leaders, tech innovators, celebrities, and politicians, for a night of opulence in the name of charity. This year, it was being held at the Guggenheim Museum, transformed for the evening into a glittering wonderland of lights and flowers. Maya arrived alone, stepping out of the car to face a gauntlet of photographers. Flashbulbs exploded around her as she paused on the red carpet, offering her practiced smile. She moved with deliberate grace, making sure every camera captured the stunning figure she cut in her midnight blue gown. Inside, she handed her wrap to an attendant and paused at the entrance to the main hall, scanning the crowd for Elijah. She found him immediately, as if her eyes were naturally drawn to him, standing with James Chen and several other executives near the center of the room. He hadn't seen her yet. Maya took the moment to study him, her heart aching with how handsome he looked in his tuxedo, how commanding his presence was even in a room full of powerful people. As if sensing her gaze, Elijah looked up, his eyes finding hers across the crowded space. Even from a distance, she saw his expression change, saw the way his conversation faltered mid-sentence. Maya didn't move, didn't go to him as she normally would have. Instead, she turned slightly, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and taking a deliberate sip while maintaining eye contact with her husband. Come to me, she thought. If you want me, come to me. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the room, the crowd between them seeming to fade away. Then James Chin said something to Elijah, drawing his attention back to their conversation. Maya took a steadying breath and moved into the room, deliberately choosing a path that took her away from Elijah. She greeted board members and their spouses, charmed investors, laughed with Carmen who was watching the unfolding drama with poorly disguised glee. From the corner of her eye, she was aware of Elijah tracking her movements, his attention repeatedly drawn to her despite his ongoing conversations. Twice, he seemed to start toward her, only to be intercepted by another guest. He's definitely noticed you, Carmen murmured when they briefly found themselves alone. I haven't seen my brother this distracted since that time he forgot to sleep for 3 days working on his first major software release. Is that a good thing? Maya asked, her confidence wavering slightly. The night was young, but already the tension of maintaining her distance when she desperately wanted to be at Elijah's side was wearing on her. It's a very good thing, Carmen assured her. Trust the process. Before Maya could respond, a deep voice spoke from behind her. Mrs. Warner. She turned to find James Chen smiling at her, his eyes twinkling with what looked suspiciously like amusement. Mr. Chen, she greeted him warmly. How lovely to see you again. James, please, he reminded her. I was just telling your husband that you two make a remarkable couple. The way you complement each other is. He paused, searching for the right word, harmonious. Maya's smile faltered slightly. Thank you. Chin studied her face, his shrewd eyes missing nothing. You know, Mrs. Warner, in my culture we have a saying, the strongest trees bend in the wind but never break. He patted her hand gently. Your husband is a proud man, but not an inflexible one. Remember that. With that cryptic advice, he excused himself, leaving Maya staring after him in confusion. What was that about? Carmen asked. I'm not entirely sure, Maya admitted. But I think he just gave me relationship advice. Before Carmen could respond, the crowd shifted, and suddenly Elijah was there, standing before them. Up close, Maya could see the tension in his jaw, the intensity in his eyes as they swept over her. "Maya," he said, his voice lower than usual. "You look stunning." "Thank you," she replied, pleased that her voice remained steady despite the way her heart raced at his proximity. "I see you're wearing the necklace," he observed, his gaze lingering on the diamond at her throat. "It's beautiful," she said simply. "Thank you for the gift." An awkward silence fell between them, filled with all the things neither of them was saying. Carmen looked from one to the other, rolled her eyes, and muttered something about finding a drink before walking away, leaving them alone. "I've been looking for you," Elijah said after a moment. "You arrived separately." "I had appointments all day," Maya explained. It seemed simpler. Another silence, this one heavier than the last. "Would you like to dance?" Elijah finally asked, extending his hand. Maya hesitated just long enough to make him uncertain, then placed her hand in his. "Yes." He led her to the dance floor, his hand warm and firm at her waist as he drew her into his arms. The orchestra was playing something slow and romantic, allowing him to hold her closer than strictly necessary. "Everyone is watching us," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "They always do," she replied equally softly. "We're giving them a good show as usual." His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Is that all this is to you? A show?" The question caught Maya off guard. She pulled back slightly to look at his face, searching for some clue to his thoughts. "That was your term for it, not mine," she reminded him. "A business arrangement. A contract. And what if I want to renegotiate the terms?" Maya's heart stuttered in her chest, but she kept her expression carefully controlled. "What did you have in mind?" Elijah opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the music ended, and the Warner Tech PR director approached them, apologizing for the interruption. "Mr. Warner, it's time for your speech," she said. "And the Chin contract signing immediately after." Elijah's jaw tightened in frustration, but he nodded. "I'll be right there." He turned back to Maya, urgency in his eyes. "Wait for me. After the signing we need to talk." Maya nodded, her throat suddenly too tight for words. Elijah squeezed her hand once, then followed the PR director toward the stage that had been set up at one end of the room. Left alone on the dance floor, Maya made her way to the edge of the crowd, her mind racing. What had he meant about renegotiating? Was it possible that Carmen and Zoe were right? That Elijah actually wanted something real between them? She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the man approaching until he spoke her name. "Maya?" "Maya Johnson." She turned, surprised to find herself face to face with Tyler Reed, the former CFO of Warner Tech, the man who had embezzled millions and nearly destroyed the company before Maya had uncovered his scheme. "Tyler," she said coldly, instinctively taking a step back. "What are you doing here? You're not welcome." He held up his hands in a placating gesture. I know. But I came to congratulate Elijah on the Chin deal." His smile was oily and sincere. "And to see you, of course. I've been following your career with interest." Something in the way he emphasized the word career made Maya's skin crawl. "You need to leave. Now." Tyler took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Not before I share what I know about your arrangement with Elijah." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you talking about?" "Please," Tyler scoffed. "A sudden marriage right when Elijah needed to clean up his image for the Chin deal? You think no one would figure it out?" His smile turned predatory. "But don't worry, your secret is safe with me. For a price." "You're trying to blackmail me?" Maya couldn't believe his audacity. "Not you. Elijah." Tyler nodded toward the stage where Elijah was just beginning his speech. "The Chin family are very traditional. If they found out his marriage was a sham, a business transaction." He shrugged. "Well, I don't think they'd sign those contracts tonight." Maya's mind raced. The Chin deal was worth billions, would secure the jobs of thousands of Warner Tech employees, would cement Elijah's legacy as the CEO who had saved the company from ruin. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the sound of Elijah's amplified speech. $2 million, Tyler replied promptly. "Transferred tonight. Or I'll be having a very interesting conversation with James Chin before those contracts are signed." Maya glanced toward the stage, where Elijah was concluding his speech to enthusiastic applause. She could see James Chin in the front row, nodding approvingly. In just a few minutes they would be signing the contracts that would finalize the deal. "There's no time," she said. Tyler pulled out his phone. "I've already set up the transfer details. All you need to do is authorize it from your phone. $2 million from your account to mine and I walk away." Maya stared at him, suddenly understanding. You don't want Elijah's money. You want mine. The money I got for marrying him. Tyler's smile widened. Poetic, isn't it? You took my place at Warner Tech, exposed me, ruined me. Now I get to take what you were paid for your services. The implication made her want to slap him, but Maya controlled herself. There was too much at stake. Not just the deal, but Elijah's reputation, the company's future. And perhaps, if she dared to hope, their chance at something real. Show me the transfer details, she said evenly. Tyler handed her his phone, triumph gleaming in his eyes. Smart choice. Maya looked at the account information, then pulled out her own phone. $2 million. Nearly half of what she had been paid for the year-long arrangement. Money she had planned to use to support her mother, to pay off her student loans, to start her own consultancy. But it was just money. And what waited for her on that stage? The chance to talk to Elijah, to hear what he had to say about renegotiating their arrangement. That was worth more. With steady fingers she authorized the transfer. It's done. Tyler checked his phone, his smile widening as he received the confirmation. Pleasure doing business with you, Mrs. Warner. He pocketed his phone and melted back into the crowd, leaving Maya standing alone, her heart pounding. On stage, Elijah was now seated at a table with James Chin, the contracts spread before them. The room had gone quiet as the two men signed document after document, officially sealing the deal that had been a year in the making. Maya watched, a strange sense of calm settling over her. It was done. The deal was safe. Elijah's company was secure. And the money? Well, she had never really been in this for the money anyway. As the signing concluded, the crowd erupted in applause. Elijah and Chin stood, shaking hands as camera flashes captured the historic moment. Maya found herself smiling, genuinely happy for Elijah despite everything. When he looked out over the crowd, his eyes found hers immediately. Even from a distance she could see his relief, his triumph, his joy. He nodded slightly to her, a private acknowledgement of her role in making this moment possible. Then he was surrounded by well-wishers, board members, executives, all clamoring for a moment of his attention. Maya stood back, watching, waiting, remembering his words, "Wait for me." But minutes stretched into half an hour, and still Elijah remained caught in the crowd, accepting congratulations, discussing future plans with investors, posing for photographs with James Chin and his family. Maya found herself drifting toward the exit, suddenly overwhelmed by the noise, the crowd, the emotional roller coaster of the evening. She needed air, needed a moment to collect herself before facing whatever conversation Elijah wanted to have. Outside, she stepped away from the main entrance, finding a quiet spot in the museum's sculpture garden. The night air was cool against her bare shoulders, and she wrapped her arms around herself, staring up at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. The sound of footsteps made her turn, and there was Elijah, slightly breathless as if he had been searching for her. "You disappeared," he said, accusation and concern mingling in his voice. "I needed some space," she replied. "Congratulations on the deal." "Thank you." He moved closer, stopping an arm's length away. "But that's not what I want to talk about." Maya steeled herself. "You mentioned renegotiating our arrangement." Elijah nodded, his expression serious. "I did. But first, I need to ask you something." He took a deep breath. "Did you just pay Tyler Reed $2 million to keep quiet about our marriage being a contract?" Maya froze, shock rendering her momentarily speechless. "How did you?" "I saw you with him," Elijah explained, his voice tight. "I recognized him immediately. When I finished the signing, I had security detain him. He was quite willing to explain when faced with the alternative of being charged with extortion." "Oh." Maya didn't know what else to say. "Why did you do it?" Elijah asked, taking another step toward her. "Why pay him off instead of coming to me?" "There was no time," she said simply. "The contract signing was about to happen. I couldn't risk the deal." "To hell with the deal," Elijah said, surprising her with the vehemence in his voice. "You gave him $2 million of your own money." Maya shrugged, trying to appear more casual than she felt. "It's just money." "Just money," Elijah repeated, studying her face intently. "The money you earned by pretending to be my wife for a year. By living in a strange man's home, attending events on his arm, putting your life on hold." When he put it like that, it sounded awful. But it hadn't been, not really. It wasn't. She began, then stopped, unsure how to explain. "It wasn't as bad as you're making it sound. Wasn't it?" Elijah was very close now, close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. "Was it worth it, Maya?" The money, the year of your life. She met his gaze steadily. Yes. The simple answer seemed to surprise him. Why? This was it, the moment of truth. Maya took a deep breath. Because somewhere along the way it stopped being pretend for me. Elijah went very still, his eyes never leaving her face. I broke our rules, she continued softly. I got emotionally involved. I fell in love with my contract husband. She hadn't planned to say it like that so directly, but now that the words were out, Maya felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Whatever happened next, rejection, anger, indifference, at least she had been honest. For a long moment, Elijah said nothing, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. Maya's heart sank. The divorce papers. He had brought them to the gala, expecting her to sign them tonight. But when he held them out to her, she saw they were already torn in half. I don't want to renegotiate our contract, Maya, he said quietly. I want to tear it up. Start over. Hope blossomed in her chest, so intense it was almost painful. What are you saying? Elijah closed the remaining distance between them, taking her hands in his. I'm saying I was a fool. I spent a year pretending not to notice when you walked into a room. A year forcing myself not to touch you when every instinct told me to hold you. A year lying to myself that what I felt for you was gratitude, admiration, friendship, anything but what it really was. And what was it? Maya whispered, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Love, Elijah said simply. I love you, Maya Johnson. Not as part of a business arrangement. Not as my contract wife. Just you. The woman who challenges me, who makes me laugh, who sees through all my defenses. Maya's vision blurred with tears. Why didn't you say something sooner? Because I was afraid, he admitted, his voice low. Afraid you only saw this as a business transaction. Afraid you were counting the days until you could walk away with your money and your freedom. His hands tightened around hers. Afraid to hope that what I felt might be returned. It is, Maya said, her voice breaking on the words. It has been for so long. Elijah's face transformed, joy breaking through his usual composure like sunrise over the horizon. Then stay. Not because of a contract, not because of a deal, not because of money. Stay because you want to. Stay because I love you and I want you to be my wife, my real wife. Maya felt tears spill over onto her cheeks. Is that a proposal? A smile spread across Elijah's face, the full, genuine smile she had seen so rarely. Not yet, he said, reaching up to brush away her tears with his thumb. When I propose for real, it won't be at a business event with a torn-up contract in one hand. It will be something worthy of you. I don't need grand gestures, Elijah, Maya said softly. I just need you. The real you, not the CEO, not the billionaire. Just the man I fell in love with. You have him, Elijah promised. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. You've always had him, even when I was too stubborn to admit it. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. Their first kiss after a year of marriage. Maya melted into him, her arms sliding around his neck as the kiss deepened. All the longing, all the unspoken feelings of the past year poured into that one moment, that one point of connection. When they finally parted, both breathless, Elijah rested his forehead against hers. No more fake marriage, he whispered. Tonight, I want us to be a real couple. Maya smiled, joy bubbling up within her. No escape. None, he agreed, pulling her closer. You're stuck with me now, my contract wife. Not a contract wife anymore, she reminded him, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Just yours. Mine, Elijah echoed, wonder in his voice. As if he couldn't quite believe his good fortune. And I'm yours. Completely. Above them, the stars twinkled in the velvet sky, witnesses to the moment when a business arrangement became a love story. The night was still young, and for Elijah and Maya, it was just the beginning. The morning after the gala, Maya woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar weight of an arm draped across her waist. She opened her eyes to find Elijah watching her, his expression soft with wonder. I was afraid I dreamed it, he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. That I'd wake up and you'd be gone. Maya smiled, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw with her fingertips. I'm right here. They had returned to the penthouse the night before, unable to keep their hands off each other in the privacy of the town car. What had followed was hours of discovery, of learning each other's bodies with the same intense focus they brought to everything else. It had been worth the wait. What are you thinking? Elijah asked, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. That I should have broken our rules sooner, Maya admitted with a smile. Elijah laughed, the sound freer and lighter than she had ever heard from him. If you had come to my bedroom at any point in the past year, I wouldn't have sent you away. Really? Even in the beginning? Especially in the beginning, he confessed. Why do you think I insisted on separate bedrooms? I didn't trust myself around you. Maya pushed herself up onto her elbow, looking down at him in disbelief. You were attracted to me from the start? From the moment you spilled coffee on my shoes and then refused to be intimidated by me, Elijah confirmed, tugging her back down to lie against his chest. But I told myself it was just physical attraction. That it would pass. And did it? Maya asked, tracing patterns on his skin. No, he said softly. It got worse. Because then I got to know you. Your intelligence, your kindness, your integrity. The way you stand up for what you believe in. The way you care about people. His arms tightened around her. I was doomed from the first week. Maya pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. We wasted so much time. We have plenty ahead of us, Elijah assured her. If you want it. I want it, she said without hesitation. I want you. Everything. He smiled, rolling them over until he hovered above her. Then you shall have it, Mrs. Warner. Later, as morning sunlight streamed through the windows, they sat at the kitchen island eating breakfast. Maya in Elijah's dress shirt, him in just pajama bottoms. The domesticity of it felt both new and familiar, as if they had been doing this forever instead of just playing at it for the past year. We should talk about the money, Elijah said, setting down his coffee cup. Maya frowned slightly. What money? The $2 million you gave Tyler. His expression hardened at the mention of the former CFO. He's returned it, with interest, and signed a non-disclosure agreement that will keep him quiet permanently. How did you manage that? Maya asked, impressed despite herself. Elijah's smile was sharp. Let's just say I reminded him of the consequences of extortion, and that going quietly was his best option. Maya nodded, relieved that the threat was neutralized. So that's settled. Not quite. Elijah took her hand, his expression serious. There's also the matter of your payment for our arrangement. The $5 million. Maya tensed slightly. What about it? I want you to keep it, Elijah said firmly. All of it. You earned it and more. I don't need it anymore, Maya said softly. Not now. It's not about need. It's what's right. What's fair. He squeezed her hand. I won't have people thinking I bought you, Maya. She understood then, this wasn't about money, it was about her independence, her dignity. Okay, she agreed. But I want to use it to start my own consultancy, working with companies like the ones you support through your foundation. Helping them become financially stable. Elijah smiled warmly. I think that's a wonderful idea. And, Maya continued, I want us to be partners in every sense. No more arrangements, no more contracts. Just us building a life together. Partners? Elijah echoed, lifting her hand to his lips. I like the sound of that. The peaceful moment was interrupted by the chiming of the elevator, followed by Carmen's voice calling out, Hello? Where are my favorite lovebirds? Maya blushed, suddenly aware of her state of undress. Elijah merely grinned, wrapping his arm more firmly around her waist. In the kitchen, he called back. And you might want to announce yourself before barging in next time. Carmen appeared in the doorway, taking in the sight of them with undisguised glee. Finally. I've been waiting a year for this. She plopped herself down on a stool across from them, helping herself to a piece of toast from Maya's plate. So, how does it feel to be in love for real? Maya exchanged a glance with Elijah, unable to contain her smile. Pretty amazing. Worth the wait, Elijah agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. Carmen pretended to gag. You two are going to be insufferable, aren't you? All lovey-dovey and disgusting. Absolutely, Elijah confirmed, not looking the least bit sorry. Good, Carmen said firmly. That's exactly how it should be. The rest of the day passed in a haze of happiness. They fielded congratulatory calls about the Chin deal, ignored emails from the PR department about post-gala press, and simply enjoyed being together without pretense for the first time. That evening, as they sat on the terrace watching the sunset, Elijah broached a subject that had been lingering in the back of Maya's mind. We should talk about what happens next, he said, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm as she leaned against him. What do you mean? Maya asked, though she had an inkling. Well, technically we're still legally married, Elijah pointed out. But it was based on a contract that we've now torn up. So I'm wondering. He hesitated, suddenly seeming nervous. if you might want to marry me again. Properly this time. Maya turned to face him, her heart skipping a beat. Are you proposing? Not yet, Elijah said with a small smile. Like I said last night, when I propose for real, it will be something worthy of you. I'm just thinking aloud. Wondering where you see us going from here. Maya considered the question seriously. I think I'd like us to date. Elijah raised an eyebrow, amusement tugging at his lips. Date? We're already married. We live together. I know, Maya nodded. But we did everything backward. We got married before we even knew each other, before we'd gone on a single date, before we'd even kissed. She took his hand, threading her fingers through his. I want us to have all those experiences. I want us to fall in love properly, without a contract hanging over our heads. Understanding dawned in Elijah's eyes. You want us to court each other? Yes, Maya confirmed. So when you do propose, for real this time, it will be because we've built something authentic together. Not because we were pushed into it by circumstances. Elijah brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Maya Johnson Warner, will you do me the honor of dating me while we remain technically married? She laughed, the sound light and joyful. Yes, Elijah Warner. I will. Then it's settled, he said decisively. Our first official date is tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. We live in the same house, Maya reminded him, amused. Details? Elijah waved dismissively. I'll be very gentlemanly and meet you at your bedroom door. The look in his eyes was anything but gentlemanly, and Maya felt heat curl through her at the promise it held. And will you be walking me back to my door at the end of the night too? Of course, he murmured, pulling her closer. But whether I come inside or not will depend entirely on how the date goes. Maya laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. I'll be sure to be on my best behavior then. Don't you dare, Elijah growled, before capturing her lips in a kiss that made her forget everything but the feel of him against her. True to his word, Elijah knocked on Maya's bedroom door at precisely 7 o'clock the following evening. When she opened it, she found him standing in the hallway in a perfectly tailored suit, holding a bouquet of red roses. For you, he said, presenting them with a formal bow that made her laugh. Thank you, Maya replied, accepting the flowers. She had spent the day in her own office at Warner Tech, working on the transition plan for her new consultancy, and had come home early to prepare for their first date. She had chosen a simple but elegant black dress that she knew Elijah had always admired, and had taken extra care with her hair and makeup. The way his eyes darkened as they traveled over her made it clear his appreciation hadn't dimmed. You look beautiful. You don't look so bad yourself, she returned with a smile. Where are we going? It's a surprise, Elijah said, offering his arm. Shall we? To Maya's astonishment, he led her not to the elevator but to the rooftop garden above their penthouse. As the door opened, she gasped in delight. The entire space had been transformed with thousands of twinkling lights and cascades of flowers. In the center stood a table for two, elegantly set with crystal and silver. Elijah, she breathed, taking in the scene. This is amazing. I wanted our first date to be special, he said, leading her to the table. And private. Just us. A personal chef served them course after course of exquisite food, while a string quartet played softly in the background. As they ate, they talked, not about business or the company or their public appearances but about themselves. Their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. All the things they should have shared before marriage, but were only now discovering about each other. I always wanted to be a firefighter when I was a kid, Elijah confessed over dessert. Right up until I was about 14. What changed? Maya asked, fascinated by this glimpse into his past. I discovered computers, he said with a rueful smile. Specifically, I discovered I could make money fixing them. And money was something we desperately needed after my father left. Maya reached across the table, taking his hand. Tell me about your mother. I've met her, of course, but you rarely talk about your relationship with her. Elijah's expression softened. She's the strongest person I know. When my father walked out, she had 2 kids to raise and no support. She worked 3 jobs, made sure Carmen and I never went without, somehow found time to come to every school event. His voice filled with quiet pride. She's the reason I am who I am. She raised a good man, Maya said softly. Elijah's eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way he rarely allowed himself to be. I've tried to be. I haven't always succeeded. None of us are perfect, Maya assured him. But you're honest, hardworking, loyal to the people who matter to you. Those are pretty good qualities in my book. A comfortable silence fell between them as they both reflected on the conversation. Finally, Elijah spoke again, his tone lighter. "So, am I doing okay? As a first date?" There was a hint of genuine uncertainty beneath the teasing question that touched Maya's heart. "The best first date I've ever had," she assured him. After dinner, they danced under the stars, Elijah holding her close as they swayed to the music of the quartet. Unlike their public performances at galas and events, this dance was private, intimate, just for them. When the night grew cool, Elijah wrapped her in his jacket, and they sat together on a cushioned bench, looking out over the city lights. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," he said quietly, his arm around her shoulders. "For giving us a second chance." Maya leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for being brave enough to ask for one." When he walked her back to her bedroom door, Elijah kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "Good night, Maya," he whispered against her lips. "Sleep well." Then, to her surprise, he turned and walked away, heading toward his own bedroom at the other end of the hall. "Elijah?" she called after him, confused. He looked back, a smile playing around his lips. "I'm courting you, remember? Properly this time." His eyes darkened with promise. "Don't worry, I won't make us wait a year." Maya laughed, shaking her head at him. "Good, because I might not last a week." His answering laugh echoed in the hallway as he disappeared into his room, leaving Maya leaning against her doorframe, her heart so full of love and happiness she thought it might burst. The days that followed fell into a new pattern, a delicious blend of their old life and something entirely fresh. They still went to work at Warner Tech, still attended meetings and events together. But now there was no pretense, no careful distance, no rules about touching or showing affection. Elijah kissed her goodbye each morning before they left for the office. He held her hand during meetings. He brought her coffee just the way she liked it without being asked. Small gestures that spoke volumes about his feelings. In the evenings he took her on proper dates, restaurants where they lingered over meals, talking for hours, a Broadway show where he held her hand throughout the performance, a private viewing at an art gallery because he remembered she had mentioned loving a particular artist. Each night he walked her to her bedroom door. Each night the goodnight kiss grew longer, more passionate, more difficult to break away from. Each night, he forced himself to leave to honor his promise to court her properly. By the end of the week, Maya was ready to scream with frustration. "This is ridiculous," she complained to Carmen over lunch on Friday. "We're literally married. We've already slept together. And now he's making us wait?" Carmen grinned, clearly enjoying her brother's approach. "He's trying to be romantic. Give the guy a break. He's making up for an entire year of pretending he didn't want to rip your clothes off." Maya sighed, pushing her salad around her plate. "I know. And it is romantic. But it's also driving me crazy." "So do something about it," Carmen suggested with a wicked gleam in her eye. "Take matters into your own hands." That evening Maya prepared carefully. She wore the midnight blue dress from the gala, the one that had made Elijah stare at her across a crowded room with naked longing. She styled her hair the way he had once absently mentioned he liked it. She waited in the living room, a glass of wine in hand, for him to return from his late meeting with the board. When the elevator doors opened and Elijah stepped out, he stopped dead in his tracks at the sight of her. "Maya," he said, his voice dropping to that deep register that never failed to send shivers down her spine. "What's the occasion?" She set down her wine glass and walked toward him, enjoying the way his eyes darkened as she approached. "I'm kidnapping you." Elijah raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at his lips. "Is that so?" She reached up, loosening his tie and slipping it free from his collar with deliberate slowness. "You've been very sweet taking me on all these dates, being so gentlemanly." She undid the top button of his shirt. "But I'm officially ending our courtship." His hands came to rest on her waist, warm and steady. "Any particular reason?" "Yes," Maya said, rising on her tiptoes to brush her lips against his. "Because I'm already in love with you. Because we've wasted enough time. And because if you don't take me to bed right now, Elijah Warner, I might actually lose my mind." A low laugh rumbled through his chest. "Well, we can't have that." In one smooth motion, he swept her up into his arms, carrying her toward his bedroom as she laughed in delight. "So much for my romantic plans," he murmured against her neck. "Oh, you can still be romantic," Maya assured him, her arms around his neck. "Just with significantly less clothing involved." Later, tangled together in his sheets, Maya traced lazy patterns on Elijah's chest as he ran his fingers through her hair. "Remind me again why we waited a whole year to do this?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Because you're stubborn, Maya replied promptly. And I was afraid of ruining our arrangement. Elijah tightened his arms around her. No more arrangements, he promised. No more contracts. Just us. Maya smiled against his skin. Just us, she echoed. I like the sound of that. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Maya's life. With their relationship finally in the open, she and Elijah settled into a new rhythm that felt both exciting and comfortable. They worked side by side at Warner Tech during the day, with Maya dividing her time between her ongoing responsibilities there and the foundation of her new consultancy. In the evenings and weekends, they explored their relationship, discovering all the things they had denied themselves during their year of pretense. Elijah surprised her constantly, with his thoughtfulness, his dry sense of humor, his willingness to be vulnerable with her in ways he had never allowed with anyone else. The stern, controlled CEO the world knew gave way to a man who could be playful, passionate, even silly when they were alone together. I never thought I'd see the day when the great Elijah Warner would build a pillow fort in the living room. Maya laughed one rainy Sunday as they huddled under a canopy of sheets and pillows, watching old movies on a laptop. Only for you, he said, pulling her closer. And if you tell Carmen, I'll deny it completely. 1 month after the gala, as summer began to give way to fall, Elijah suggested a weekend away at his family's lake house upstate. It was a beautiful rustic retreat that had belonged to his grandparents, the only property he had refused to upgrade or modernize after his success. It's perfect just the way it is, he told Maya as they drove up on Friday evening, the city falling away behind them. This is the one place where I've always been able to just be myself. The cabin was indeed perfect, cozy and warm, with a large stone fireplace and windows that looked out over the calm waters of the lake. That night, as they sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the stars reflected in the water, Maya felt a sense of peace she had never known before. I could stay here forever, she murmured, leaning back against Elijah's chest as he held her. We can come whenever you want, he promised, his chin resting on top of her head. This place is as much yours as it is mine now. The casual way he included her in his future made Maya's heart swell. Despite their legal marriage, despite the past month of openness about their feelings, there was still something profound about these quiet moments of commitment, these small acknowledgments that what they had was permanent. The next morning, Elijah suggested a hike to a nearby waterfall. The September air was crisp and clear, the forest around them alive with early autumn colors. As they climbed the well-worn trail, Maya found herself thinking about how much her life had changed in just 1 year. Penny for your thoughts? Elijah asked, helping her over a fallen log. Maya smiled, accepting his hand. I was just thinking about where I was this time last year. Working as a financial consultant, living in my tiny apartment, completely unaware that I was about to meet you and have my entire life turned upside down. For the better, I hope? There was a hint of vulnerability in his question that still surprised her sometimes. Definitely for the better, she assured him, squeezing his hand. Even with all the complications, I wouldn't change a thing. They reached the waterfall just as the midday sun broke through the trees, creating a rainbow in the mist that rose from the churning water below. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a perfect moment in a perfect day. Until Elijah's phone rang, shattering the peaceful silence. He frowned, pulling it from his pocket. It's Carmen. I should take this, she wouldn't call while we're away unless it was important. Maya nodded, moving to the edge of the clearing to give him privacy. From the tense set of his shoulders and the clipped responses he gave, she could tell something was wrong. When he hung up, his expression was troubled. What is it? She asked, concerned. Tyler Reed, Elijah said, spitting the name like it tasted bad in his mouth. He's talking to the press. Apparently, the NDA wasn't enough to keep him quiet. Maya's stomach dropped. About our marriage? Elijah nodded grimly. Carmen says there's a reporter from the Business Journal sniffing around. They've been calling board members, asking questions about whether our relationship was arranged specifically to secure the Chin deal. But the deal is already signed, Maya pointed out. Even if the truth comes out now, it can't affect the contract. No, but it could affect Warner Tech stock price, public perception, my reputation. Elijah ran a hand over his face, frustration evident in every line of his body. And more importantly, it could affect you. I don't want you dragged through the mud because of this. Maya moved closer, placing a hand on his arm. Hey, we'll figure it out together, okay? Whatever happens, we face it as a team. Some of the tension left Elijah's shoulders at her touch. You're right. I'm sorry for letting this ruin our weekend. It hasn't ruined anything, she assured him. Do we need to go back to the city? He hesitated, then shook his head. Carmen's handling it for now. She'll call if anything changes. He took a deep breath, visibly pushing the concern away. Let's not let this spoil our time here. They continued their hike, but the carefree mood was gone. Maya could see Elijah's mind working, calculating risks, considering options, planning countermoves. It was the side of him she had first known, the strategic CEO, always 3 steps ahead. By the time they returned to the cabin that evening, he seemed to have reached a decision. I'm going to preempt Tyler, he announced as they prepared dinner together in the small kitchen. Give an exclusive interview, control the narrative. Maya paused in chopping vegetables. What exactly would you say? The truth, Elijah said simply. Or most of it anyway. That our marriage began as a mutually beneficial arrangement, but developed into something real over time. He looked at her, his expression serious. With your permission, of course. Maya considered the proposal. Will people believe it? The falling in love part, I mean. They will if we're convincing enough. Elijah set down the knife he was using and came to stand before her, taking her hands in his. And we won't have to fake anything because it's the truth. I did fall in love with you, Maya. Somewhere between our first meeting and now, you became the most important person in my life. The simple sincerity of his words brought tears to her eyes. I love you too, she whispered. And yes, we should tell the truth. On our terms. Relief and gratitude flickered across his face before he leaned in to kiss her softly. Thank you. I'll call my PR team tomorrow, set it up for when we return. That settled, they finished preparing dinner and ate on the porch, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and crimson. As darkness fell, Elijah built a fire in the fireplace, and they curled up together on the oversized couch, the warmth of the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. You know, Maya mused, her head on Elijah's chest as he played with her hair, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Once it's all out in the open, we won't have to wonder if someone's going to expose our secret. We can just move forward. You're right, Elijah agreed. No more looking over our shoulders. He was quiet for a moment, then added, there's something else I've been meaning to talk to you about. Something in his tone made Maya sit up, turning to face him. What is it? Elijah took her hand, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. I've been thinking about the future. Our future. Maya's heart began to beat faster. Oh. Yes. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I know we've only been real for a little over a month, but we've lived together for a year. We know each other's habits, preferences, flaws. A small smile touched his lips. I know you hate mornings and can't function without coffee. You know I work too much and forget to eat when I'm focused on a project. You also leave wet towels on the bathroom floor, Maya teased gently, trying to ease the sudden tension. Elijah laughed. See? You know all my terrible habits. And yet you're still here. I am, she confirmed softly. And I plan to stay. That's what I'm hoping. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I had a whole plan for this. Dinner at that restaurant where we had our first public appearance. Champagne. A speech I've been practicing for days. He smiled ruefully. But sitting here with you, in this place that means so much to me, it just feels right to do it now. No audience, no performance. Just us. Maya's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring, elegant and sophisticated, yet with a warmth to it that perfectly reflected her own style. This isn't the ring from our contract marriage, Elijah said softly. This is something new. Something real. He took a deep breath. Maya Johnson, will you do me the extraordinary honor of marrying me? Again, but for real this time? Not because of a business deal or a contract, but because I love you more than I ever thought possible and can't imagine my life without you in it. Tears filled Maya's eyes, spilling over onto her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Elijah Warner, I will marry you. For real, for love, forever. With hands that trembled slightly, Elijah slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the firelight and scattering it around the room. It's beautiful, Maya said, admiring the way it looked on her hand. It was my grandmother's, Elijah explained. The only thing of value my family had before. Everything. My mother kept it safe all these years, waiting for me to find someone worthy of it. His voice softened. She gave it to me the day after the gala. Said she'd known from the moment she met you that you were the one, even before I was ready to admit it to myself. Your mother is a wise woman, Maya said with a watery smile. She is, Elijah agreed. And she's going to be thrilled when we tell her the news. He paused, considering. Though we might want to keep the getting married again part between us for now. At least until after the interview. Maya laughed, the sound bright with happiness. Agreed. It might be a bit much to explain we're engaged while still technically married to each other. Elijah pulled her close, his expression growing serious again. Thank you for saying yes. For giving us a second chance. For loving me despite all my flaws and mistakes. Thank you for being brave enough to ask, Maya replied, echoing her words from weeks before. For tearing up that contract. For seeing me as more than just a convenient solution to your problem. They sealed their new engagement with a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. A future built not on business arrangements or practical considerations, but on love, trust, and the deep understanding that comes from seeing each other at their best and worst. Outside, the lake reflected countless stars in its still surface, while inside, before the dancing flames of the fire, Maya and Elijah began to plan their second wedding. One that would celebrate not what they pretended to be, but who they truly were together. The exclusive interview with the Business Journal was scheduled for the Wednesday after their return from the lake house. Maya and Elijah spent the intervening days preparing with the PR team, crafting their narrative carefully, honest enough to be believable but private enough to protect the core of their relationship. Remember, the PR director advised during their final prep session, the key message is transformation. What began as a practical arrangement evolved naturally into genuine love. Focus on the moments that changed your perspective about each other. Maya nodded, thinking of those quiet evenings when Elijah had let his guard down, the time she had glimpsed the man behind the powerful CEO facade. There was no shortage of truth to draw from. Elijah squeezed her hand under the conference table. We've got this, he said quietly. The morning of the interview, however, brought an unexpected complication. Maya woke feeling nauseated, barely making it to the bathroom before emptying the contents of her stomach. Are you all right? Elijah asked, concern evident in his voice as he held her hair back. Just nervous about the interview, I guess, Maya said weakly, though she had never experienced anxiety this way before. We can reschedule if you're not feeling well, he offered immediately. Maya shook her head, rinsing her mouth at the sink. No, we need to get ahead of this story. I'll be fine. Despite her assurances, the nausea persisted throughout the morning. By the time the journalist arrived at their penthouse, they had decided a home setting would reinforce the personal nature of their story. Maya was sipping ginger tea and trying to ignore the churning in her stomach. Maya, are you sure you're up for this? Elijah asked one last time as they waited for the journalist to be shown up. Positive, she said with more confidence than she felt. This is too important to postpone. The interview began smoothly enough. Sophia Chin, the journalist, was professional and direct, asking about the origins of their relationship. It's true that our marriage began unconventionally, Elijah acknowledged, following their prepared narrative. We initially came together at a time when my company needed stability and Maya's financial expertise had already proven invaluable. So it was a business arrangement? Chin prompted. At first, Maya confirmed. But we quickly discovered there was more between us than a contract. Chin looked skeptical. Yet sources close to Warner Tech suggest the marriage was specifically timed to coincide with negotiations for the Chin deal, which required a stable leadership image. Elijah didn't flinch. The timing wasn't coincidental, I'll admit that. But what began as practical considerations developed into something neither of us expected. As the interview progressed, Maya found herself increasingly uncomfortable, not just from the probing questions but from the persistent nausea that seemed to be getting worse rather than better. When Chin asked about their future plans, Maya stood abruptly. Excuse me for a moment, she managed to say before hurrying from the room. In the bathroom, she splashed cold water on her face, trying to steady herself. The queasiness, the sensitivity to smells, the fatigue she had been feeling lately but had attributed to stress. A suspicion began to form in her mind, one that both terrified and exhilarated her. When she returned to the living room, Elijah was wrapping up the interview, his expression concerned as he glanced at her. I think that's all the questions we have time for today, he said firmly to Chin. My wife isn't feeling well. The journalist looked disappointed but gathered her notes. Thank you both for your candor. The article will run in Friday's edition. After Chin left, Elijah immediately came to Maya's side. That's it. I'm calling the doctor. No need, Maya said, her voice shaky. I think I know what's wrong with me. Or rather, what's right. Elijah's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? Maya took a deep breath, hardly daring to voice her suspicion. Elijah, I think I might be pregnant. His eyes widened, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his face: shock, wonder, concern, and something that looked very much like hope. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "No," she admitted. "But the symptoms fit. The nausea, the fatigue, the sensitivity to smells." She bit her lip. "I'm late too. I didn't think much of it because my cycle has always been irregular, especially under stress, but now with everything else." Elijah was already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling Dr. Patel. She can come here, do a test right away." 2 hours later they had their answer. Dr. Patel, Elijah's personal physician, confirmed what Maya had suspected. She was approximately 6 weeks pregnant. "Everything looks normal," the doctor assured them after a preliminary examination. "But given the early stage, we'll want to monitor you closely. I'll set up an appointment for a full workup next week." After she left, Maya and Elijah sat together on the couch, still processing the news. "A baby?" Elijah said, wonder in his voice. "Our baby." Maya nodded, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "It must have happened that first night after the gala." Elijah's expression grew serious. "How do you feel about this? I know it's unexpected. We never discussed children, and with your new consultancy just getting started." "I'm scared," Maya admitted. "It's sooner than I would have planned. But I'm also happy." She looked up at him, searching his face. "What about you?" Elijah took her hands in his eyes suspiciously bright. "Maya, I never thought I would have this. A woman I love, a child on the way. Growing up with just my mother watching her struggle. I convinced myself that a family wasn't in the cards for me. That I was better off alone, focused on my work." He swallowed hard. "But the thought of having a family with you? It's everything I never knew I wanted." Relief washed over Maya. "So we're doing this? We're having a baby?" "We're having a baby," Elijah confirmed, his smile brighter than she had ever seen it. He leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to her lips. "And I promise you this child will never doubt for a moment that they are loved, that they are wanted, that they belong." Words that, Maya realized, spoke to Elijah's own childhood wounds as much as to their future child. She cupped his face in her hands, her heart overflowing with love for this complex, guarded man who was allowing himself to be vulnerable with her. "Our child will know all of that," she promised. "Every single day." They spent the rest of the evening talking about the baby, about the practical arrangements they would need to make, about their fears and hopes for parenthood. Maya called her mother, sharing the news through happy tears, while Elijah called his mother and Carmen, both of whom responded with excitement that matched their own. It was well past midnight when they finally went to bed, Elijah curling protectively around Maya, his hand resting over her stomach where their child was growing. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "Both of you." Maya covered his hand with hers, contentment washing over her. "We love you too." The next morning, however, the bubble of joy was abruptly burst when Carmen called, her voice tense. "Have you seen the Business Times?" she asked without preamble. "No," Elijah replied, putting the call on speaker so Maya could hear. "Our interview with the Business Journal doesn't run until Friday." "This isn't about your interview," Carmen said grimly. "Tyler Reed gave his own exclusive. With emails." "Emails?" Maya repeated, a sinking feeling in her stomach. "Apparently he saved copies of the correspondence about your arrangement," Carmen explained. "The original contract, the payments, everything. He claims he found them during discovery for an unrelated lawsuit and felt morally obligated to expose the truth." Elijah's face darkened with anger. "That snake. After everything he stole from the company, he has the gall to claim moral high ground. The article is not kind," Carmen continued. "It's framing the whole thing as a deception orchestrated to manipulate the Chin deal. They're questioning the legality of it, suggesting it might constitute fraud." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "Fraud? That's ridiculous. We were legally married. There was nothing illegal about our arrangement." "Tell that to the Business Times," Carmen said dryly. "They're running with the headline Warner Tech CEO's marriage of convenience. Did fake love seal billion-dollar deal?" Elijah swore under his breath. "I'll have legal look at it immediately. This is clearly defamation." "That's not all," Carmen added, her voice dropping. "The stock is already taking a hit in pre-market trading. The board is calling an emergency meeting for 10 a.m. "I'll be there," Elijah said grimly. After ending the call, he turned to Maya, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. "I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I wanted to avoid." "It's not your fault," Maya assured him, though she couldn't quite hide her own worry. We knew this was a possibility when we decided to go public ourselves. At least we have the Business Journal interview coming out Friday. That will help counter the narrative. Elijah nodded, but his jaw was tight. I'll handle the board. You should stay home, rest. Think about the baby. Maya bristled slightly at his protective tone. I'm pregnant, not sick. And I'm still CFO of Warner Tech. I should be at that board meeting too. Elijah looked like he wanted to argue, but after a moment's hesitation, he nodded. You're right. We're in this together. The board meeting was every bit as tense as they had anticipated. Several members were openly hostile, accusing Elijah of compromising the company's integrity and potentially exposing them to legal liability. The Chen family could sue us for misrepresentation, argued Richard Winters, one of the oldest board members. They believed they were dealing with a stable, traditionally married CEO, not a man in a business arrangement masquerading as a marriage. There was no misrepresentation, Elijah countered firmly. Maya and I were legally married. The contract between us was private, not related to company business. But the timing, another board member pressed. You have to admit it looks suspicious. I've never denied that Warner Tech's public image was a consideration in our decision to marry when we did, Elijah acknowledged. But that doesn't change the fact that the Chin deal was won on the merits of our technology and business plan, not on my marital status. Throughout the debate, Maya sat quietly beside Elijah, her hand occasionally brushing his under the table, a silent reminder that he wasn't facing this alone. When finally called upon to speak, she addressed the board with the calm confidence that had earned their respect over the past year. I understand your concerns, she said. But I want to make something very clear. While our marriage may have begun as an arrangement, that doesn't mean it wasn't real. Elijah and I built a genuine partnership that benefited this company in countless ways beyond public perception. She looked each board member in the eye. And more importantly, what began as a practical decision evolved into something neither of us expected: genuine love and commitment. Her words seemed to soften some of the hostility in the room, but Richard Winters remained unconvinced. A touching story, he said dismissively. But the fact remains that the company's reputation is now at risk. The stock is already down 6%. Shareholders will demand accountability. Then we'll provide it, Elijah said firmly. The Business Journal will publish our interview on Friday. We're being transparent about how our relationship evolved. In the meantime, I suggest we issue a simple statement acknowledging that while our marriage began unconventionally, it has developed into a genuine partnership both personally and professionally. After further heated discussion, the board reluctantly agreed to Elijah's approach. As the meeting adjourned, several members approached to offer awkward words of support, while others left without making eye contact. That could have been worse, Maya observed as they returned to Elijah's office. It's not over, he replied grimly, closing the door behind them. This is just the beginning. He was right. Over the next 2 days, the story exploded across business media and then spilled into mainstream outlets. Photos of them at various events were analyzed for signs of fakery. Old interviews were scrutinized for inconsistencies in their relationship narrative. Business rivals seized the opportunity to question Elijah's integrity, suggesting that if he would fabricate a marriage, what else might he be lying about? The Warner Tech stock continued to fall, losing nearly 15% of its value by Thursday. Advertisers began to express concerns. And worst of all, rumors circulated that the Chen family was considering legal action to void the recently signed deal. 4 months later, on a crisp winter day with snow gently falling outside, Maya stood in the bridal suite of the small chapel where she and Elijah had chosen to renew their vows. She smoothed her hands over the simple ivory dress that flowed gracefully over her now visible baby bump. You look beautiful, her mother said, adjusting the delicate floral crown that rested on Maya's loose curls. Absolutely radiant. Maya smiled, the happiness inside her too big to be contained. I feel it. This day was everything their first wedding had not been. Intimate instead of elaborate, emotional instead of strategic, centered on love rather than business. No photographers except for the single one they had hired to capture memories for themselves. No press, no publicity, no corporate agenda. Just family and closest friends, gathered to witness their commitment to each other. A soft knock at the door announced Carmen's arrival. She entered wearing a deep blue bridesmaid's dress, her eyes widening at the sight of Maya. Wow, she breathed. My brother is going to lose his mind when he sees you. Maya laughed. That's the goal. Carmen came closer, taking Maya's hands in hers. I just wanted to say, I'm so happy you're really becoming my sister today. Not that you weren't before, but... I know what you mean, Maya assured her, squeezing her hands. This time it's for all the right reasons. He's different with you, Carmen said softly. Happier. More human. You've given him something he never thought he could have. He's given me the same, Maya replied, blinking back unexpected tears. A family. A home. A place to belong. Her mother tactfully slipped out to give them a moment, and Carmen pulled a small box from her purse. Before I forget, Elijah asked me to give you this. A gift before the ceremony. Inside the box, Maya found a delicate gold bracelet with 3 small charms, a coffee cup, a key, and a tiny heart. The coffee cup is for how you met, Carmen explained. The key is for the home you've built together. And the heart? Well, that one's obvious. Maya smiled, touching each charm gently. It was so perfectly Elijah, thoughtful, meaningful, a reference to their shared history that only they would fully understand. Will you help me put it on? She asked, holding out her wrist. As Carmen fastened the bracelet, another knock came at the door. This time it was Zoe, Maya's best friend and maid of honor. It's time, she announced, her face glowing with excitement. Everyone's ready. Maya took a deep breath, a sense of rightness settling over her. This was how it should have been from the beginning, marrying Elijah not out of practicality or convenience, but because she loved him with every fiber of her being. Let's not keep him waiting, she said, gathering her simple bouquet of winter blooms. The chapel was small but beautiful, with light streaming through stained glass windows and candles flickering along the aisle. Unlike their first wedding where they had stood stiffly side by side before a judge in a sterile courthouse, this ceremony had been designed to reflect who they were as a couple, warm, genuine, and deeply connected. As Maya walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, her eyes found Elijah waiting for her at the altar. The look on his face, a mixture of awe, love, and absolute certainty, brought fresh tears to her eyes. This was real. This was true. This was everything. When she reached him, he took her hands in his voice barely above a whisper as he said, "You are so beautiful. I can't believe you're mine." "I always have been," she whispered back. From that very first coffee spill. The minister smiled at their exchange before addressing the small gathering. "Friends and family, we are gathered here today not to witness a first union, but to celebrate a renewal and deepening of a commitment already made. Elijah and Maya may have begun their journey together in an unconventional way, but they stand before us today having discovered that sometimes love grows in the most unexpected places, between two people who were brought together by circumstance but chose to stay together out of love." Maya and Elijah had written their own vows for this ceremony, words that acknowledged their unique path while celebrating the genuine love they had found along the way. Elijah spoke first, his voice steady and sure. "Maya, when I asked you to marry me the first time, I offered you a contract. Terms and conditions. An arrangement that would benefit us both." His thumb brushed over her knuckles. "What I didn't know then was that I was signing up for a journey that would transform me completely. You walked into my life with spilled coffee and a fearless attitude, and you saw through every wall I had built around myself." He paused, swallowing hard before continuing. "Today I'm not offering you a contract. I'm offering you my heart, my trust, my future. I promise to be your partner in every sense of the word. To support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine. To be a father our child will be proud of. To never again hide behind practicality when what I really mean is, I love you." His voice dropped to an intimate murmur. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Maya Johnson. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that for a moment." Maya blinked back tears, taking a moment to compose herself before beginning her own vows. "Elijah, when I agreed to marry you a year ago, I told myself it was just business. A practical solution to both our problems." She smiled through her tears. "I was wrong. It was the beginning of the most important journey of my life. Living with you, working beside you, seeing the man behind the CEO everyone else knows, I fell in love with you day by day in quiet moments when you thought no one was watching." She squeezed his hands. "Today, I'm not making promises because of a document we signed. I'm making them because I choose you freely and completely. I promise to be your safe harbor in every storm. To remind you that you are loved not for what you achieve but for who you are. To build a family with you based on trust, respect, and the kind of love that grows stronger with every challenge." Her voice softened. "You once said I saved your company. But the truth is, you saved me too, from a life half-lived, from never knowing what it means to be truly seen and accepted. I love you, Elijah Warner. Yesterday, today, and always." There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel as they exchanged rings, new ones, symbols of their renewed commitment. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Elijah's kiss was tender yet passionate, a perfect reflection of the man she had come to know and love. The reception was held at the lake house, transformed by twinkling lights and winter greenery into a magical setting for their intimate celebration. Unlike the formal, impersonal events they had attended together in the past, this gathering was relaxed and joyful, family and friends sharing meals, stories, and laughter without pretense or performance. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself standing by the lakeside, watching the reflection of lights on the frozen surface. Elijah came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her, his hands resting protectively over their growing child. "Happy?" he murmured against her hair. "Completely," she assured him, leaning back into his embrace. "You? More than I ever thought possible. More than I ever thought possible." He turned her gently in his arms, his eyes serious as they met hers. "I want you to know something. If I had to do it all again, the contract, the public scrutiny, all of it, I would. In a heartbeat. Because it brought me to you." Maya reached up, her palm warm against his cheek. "I would too. Every step led us here. And here is exactly where I want to be." Inside the house, someone started playing music, the soft strains drifting out to where they stood. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Warner?" Elijah asked, a smile playing around his lips. "You may indeed, Mr. Warner," she replied, stepping into his arms. As they swayed together under the winter stars, Maya reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. From a spilled coffee and a business proposition to a love that had weathered public scrutiny and private doubts to emerge stronger than before. Their beginning may have been unconventional, their path filled with unexpected turns, but their destination, this profound connection, this unshakable partnership, this family they were creating together, was more beautiful than anything they could have planned. No more fake marriage. No more pretending. Just truth and love, and the promise of a future built together, step by step, day by day. Their contract was complete. Their real story was just beginning. Spring arrived in a burst of color and new life, transforming the city after the long winter. On a perfect May morning, exactly 1 year after Elijah had first presented Maya with divorce papers, she sat in a sunlit hospital room cradling their newborn daughter. "She has your eyes," Elijah murmured, perched on the edge of the bed beside them, his expression one of wonder as he gently stroked the baby's tiny cheek. "And your determination," Maya replied with a tired smile. 18 hours of labor, she definitely inherited your stubbornness." Elijah laughed softly, his gaze never leaving their daughter's face. "A quality that will serve her well in life." They had named her Olivia Grace Warner, Olivia after Elijah's mother, Grace for the unexpected blessing she represented in both their lives. Born healthy at 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything around her, she was perfect in every way. "I can't believe she's really here," Maya said, adjusting the soft blanket around Olivia's tiny form. "That she's ours." "Believe it," Elijah said, pressing a kiss to Maya's temple. "You were amazing. I've never seen anything like it." "Like what?" "Your strength," he said simply. "The way you brought her into the world." He shook his head, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I couldn't possibly love you more than I already did. I was wrong." Maya leaned against him, exhausted but happier than she had ever been. "We did it," she whispered. "We made a family. The best kind," Elijah agreed. "One built on choice, not obligation. On love, not convenience." A soft knock at the door announced the arrival of visitors. Their mothers, followed by Carmen, all eager to meet the newest member of the family. As the room filled with exclamations of delight and the gentle passing of the baby from one pair of loving arms to another, Maya watched Elijah's face. The change in him over the past year was remarkable. The stern, guarded CEO had given way to a man who smiled easily, who showed his emotions without hesitation, who had found a balance between the driven business leader he had always been and the devoted husband and father he had become. Later, when their visitors had gone and the three of them were alone again, Elijah took his turn holding Olivia while Maya rested. The sight of her powerful husband cradling their tiny daughter with such gentle care made her heart swell. "What are you thinking?" she asked, watching him murmur softly to the sleeping infant. Elijah looked up, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I'm thinking about promises," he said quietly. "About the ones my father broke when he walked away from his family. About the ones I made to myself growing up, that I would never depend on anyone, never be vulnerable, never risk being left behind." He smiled down at Olivia. "And then I'm thinking about the new promises I've made. To you. To her. To myself. What promises are those? Maya asked softly. To be present. To be honest. To love without holding back. He met her gaze. To give our daughter what I didn't have. A father who stays, who shows up, who puts family above everything else. Maya reached for his hand. You're already doing that, Elijah. Every day. He nodded, the weight of his commitment evident in every line of his face. I want her to grow up knowing she's the most important thing in our lives. More important than any business deal, any company, any success. She will, Maya assured him. We both will. The moment was interrupted by a text message on Elijah's phone. He glanced at it then smiled. What is it? Maya asked. The board's response to my proposal, he said, showing her the message. They've approved the changes to Warner Tech's family leave policy. 6 months paid leave for all new parents, regardless of gender or whether they're biological or adoptive parents. Maya's eyes widened. That's incredible. When did you propose this? 3 months ago, Elijah admitted. After our last board meeting before you went on maternity leave. I wanted it to be a surprise. A surprise for who? Me or the hundreds of Warner Tech employees who will benefit? Elijah's smile widened. Both. It's part of a larger initiative. On-site childcare, flexible working hours, better healthcare coverage for families. I want Warner Tech to be a place where people don't have to choose between their careers and being present for their children. Maya felt tears welling in her eyes, pregnancy hormones still making her emotional. You're changing things from the inside out. I'm trying, Elijah said modestly. Being with you, preparing for Olivia, it's made me see things differently. Success isn't just about profit margins and stock prices. It's about the impact we have on people's lives. Starting with our own family, but extending to every family connected to our company. He hesitated, then added, there's something else I've been thinking about. A new direction for us. What kind of direction? Maya asked, curious. Your consultancy, Elijah said. I know you've been doing preliminary work on it between Warner Tech responsibilities and preparing for the baby. But what if we expanded the vision? Created a foundation together, focused on supporting women entrepreneurs and family-friendly business practices. Maya sat up straighter, intrigued. Go on. We both know the business world isn't structured for people, especially women, who want both a career and a family. What if we used our resources, our connections, our experience to change that? His eyes lit with the same passion she had first seen when he talked about his company. You have the financial expertise. I have the business network. Together we could make a real difference. The idea resonated deeply with Maya. Throughout her career, she had seen talented women step back or drop out entirely when faced with the impossible choice between professional